Well, welcome everybody to DrZzs. I am What Are We Fixing Today? And today we have the PixelHeads for another stream about X-Lights. Cross your fingers. I hope I dotted my I's and crossed my T's and underscored the letters in between, because we're going to try to go now live to the PixelHeads. Let's see what happens. Hey guys, are you there?
Hey, SG.
Howdy, howdy.
Sounds good. All right. So we're going to talk about some stuff today. Well, the Pixelheads are. I'm going to try to move along. At least I got my audio fixed from last time, so I can at least talk if I need to. But I'm not going to have a whole lot to say because, like I said, I know pixels enough to be able to like hook up wires and know how to calculate Ohm's law. But to make it pretty, ain't happening. These guys are going to help you now today find some hardware. So take it away, Chris.
Hey, guys. All right. So when last we left our heroes, we were building a layout in Justin's new house. And Justin's not here today, so we're going to pick out what goes on his new house for him. It's going to be some fun. So I'm going to share my screen, and with some luck, I'll try and avoid oversharing. Wouldn't be a good DrZzs stream if we didn't share some secrets or something, right?
I think the YouTube video might have froze a little bit here.
Something's
Can you guys see my
that's
screen?
not good. You guys are locked. That's not good.
We fixed it.
Technical difficulties.
Oh, yeah, they can't see you.
I mean, lucky them.
No, unlucky me. How about that?
Well, anyway, Chris, we can discuss what we're planning here while SG gets his stuff going. So you're helping Justin build out his layout, right?
That's right. Are we live now? Am I talking
think we're
to
good.
Yeah, it
all of
looks like
YouTube?
it's on YouTube.
Yep, we're there. The video was a little weird for a second. It's actually back now, so.
All right, awesome. So what I'm doing now is I'm kind of drawing up the stuff that Justin already had in his house, because he's going to reuse a lot of that stuff he already has.
So this is year 2, 3,
This
something
is-
like that?
This is year 2 in the new house. Year 1's this year. There's nothing on his house yet, but he'll get there.
Well, our last
So
video was about his roof line, so that was first year.
last video was his first project with his roof lines, right? And we filled in some other stuff. We've added his little light thief over here in the corner, and some snowflakes up here. And we're gonna add a whole bunch of Justin Z's flakes, because can't be a Justin Z's house without a bunch of Justin Z's flakes, right?
Right.
Lots of them.
Yeah.
He's got plenty of roof space too, so we can get creative if we need to.
Well, that's what I was thinking. What do you think we put on the roof?
Well, what kind of props does he have? Lots of snowflakes, some spinners.
I don't think he has any spinners yet. You want to throw a couple of showstopper spinners up there?
Yeah, he needs some spinners up there.
So I think a lot of the folks on this stream get a lot of our props from EFL Designs. You guys can stop me if I'm wrong, but I think that's kind of the go-to.
Yeah.
If he sells it, it's coming from there if it can.
Yeah, Jackie at EFL Designs does create some pretty neat props. He also does some very good X models, lots of sub models, and he ships super fast.
Yeah, that's a really amazing thing. Like even in the middle of the season, like
Yes.
December 1st, you might order something December 1st and get it later that week.
Yeah.
Pretty outstanding. So we're going to come into his website here, and let's see what we have for spinners. I'm kind of partial to the showstopper spinner because it's going to add a lot of capabilities and submodels and stuff.
Yeah, that one's pretty neat. It's versatile. I like it. I personally use one for both Halloween and Christmas. It has bat sub models and snowflakes. It's very versatile.
Yeah, see, that's awesome when you can use it for 2 different holidays, not even have to take it down off the house, because you can be up on the ladder when it's warm and not icy. And
Yeah, definitely. Extension ladders in the ice is not a good idea.
Not my favorite thing.
Now, have we explained what exactly a submodel is?
No, but we'll get there when we start talking about importing some stuff. But they're cool. You'll like them.
Yeah, they can be
So-
kind of overwhelming. Some props have a bunch of them.
They sure can. They sure can. So we're going to import this model here by clicking on the create new download because the EFL stuff is in the xLights downloads stuff. I'm going to drag a box where the prop's going to go, and it's going to go about there. And I'll expand out the vendor it's coming from, and we're going to choose the spinners, show stopper spinner right there. And we're going to take a glance, and we're going to do a 46 by 46 or a 36 by 36. We'll find that out in a minute. They're available in 2 sizes.
Yeah, in more advanced layouts, you can actually set measurements, and then that's when the size of the prop does actually change something.
So
You
I
can drop
actually dropped a line here for the height of his door earlier and set a ruler to be that same size
Yes.
in 3D. So we're going to be roughly close on size just because I think it gives it a little easier way to make sure your stuff matches. So it doesn't do that out of the box. We can talk about a little hack to make that work in 2D in a little while.
Okay.
So here's our showstopper spinner. And I feel like these things are best done in pairs. We'll make them
Nothing wrong with pairs.
lined up
Oh,
nice.
And we still got some roof space.
It's got a lot of roof space, really.
So let's be creative. What else do we got up there? More spinners? Yeah, let's just load it up with spinners. It's Justin's money, right?
Justin's money. You know, Justin's got a gnome that no, that's not the right gnome. Where is the gnome he has? Is that it? I don't think it's that one.
I don't know. Doesn't have to be too specific. We can just pick one. We got the idea of it. Justin can fix it later.
That's right. What are friends for, right?
Right. Who knows? Maybe it's a new one he wants to buy.
There you go. I think we told him that anything that we put on his layout, he had to install, right?
I think we told him that. I don't think he agreed, but we can, just
Fair.
we can be insistent.
All right. What other fun stuff can we throw up here? Maybe a 46 E-flake. Oh, yeah, I know where that's going to go with the backlights. Here.
Okay.
Hold on, I'm frozen.
That vendor you mentioned, can somebody put a link in the chat for him?
When you guys mind hitting that?
I don't follow.
Or do they go up here? I don't know.
You talked about the guy who ships really fast, even in season. That guy.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
EFL.
He would probably want his link.
Oh, yeah.
That would be
Okay.
helpful for sure. So you keep seeing me highlight these and doing right click, align top. And that's on purpose. As you start getting into importing effects and things, they're kind of creeping up the house or shifting side to side on the house, having them light up like props at the same time can be a desired thing, right? Like if you have it just kind of haphazard on here, like one's over here and one's down here. I mean, if that's actually where they are in the house and they're that far off, then yeah, you probably want to do that. But if they're going to be close, you want xLights to address them kind of at the same time as effects are coming up the house. We alluded to this a little bit last week, but this picture is not exactly ideal. If you can kind of see the roof line here, the roof line is perfectly horizontal as far as the lights that I drew on it. And if you see over here, it's way above the gutter, and here it's down below the gutter. I want to draw the roof line horizontally anyway, because here, let me show you why. If we do a new sequence here, let's do a quick animation sequence. And we're going to do bars. on the whole roof. And we're going to do direction up on the bars. Actually, we're going to do bars on all pixels. And I haven't updated the groups yet for today's sequence, but we'll get there. So there's going to be 2. They're going to come up. So as we look in the house preview here, you can see it hits both the window frames at the same time. Hits the tops of these window frames at the same time. And it's going to hit the roof at the same time. But if the roof wasn't level, like let's say that I put the roof to match the picture exactly, we come into sequence and we play that again, now watch what happens.
You put it on really fast.
It's going really fast for you?
No, it's slow. I'm just being facetious.
Okay. Now see, it still hit it at the same
I
time.
don't think you rendered.
I think you're right. Good call.
I think we talked a little bit about that last time, but it's always a good idea after you've made a bunch of changes to re-render.
Definitely.
Yes.
So you're going to see it's going to start on this side of the roof and then kind of go this way. And that's really not the effect you're going for with effects like that, right? So it matters. Maybe it doesn't matter a lot, but little things like that add up.
Yeah.
So if you are drawing your lines and you hold the shift key while you're dragging one end, you see that line has turned red. That's kind of like a snap to horizontal feature. And it does the same thing if you're going vertical. You can make it snap here and it kind of turns white. We're going to put that back in so that it's horizontal. And then I click to let it go. I'm going to come back to sequence and it'll render. Not that we really need that for right now. So back to drawing stuff. We've got some snowflakes. You want to throw some arches in there maybe?
Yeah.
Let's do some arches. Move the spiral trees over here for now. Call it a spiral tree grove. And then, we definitely need a mega tree. I drew this one earlier.
That should go on the roof.
You think the mega tree up on the roof?
Oh, yeah.
Supporting it might be a little challenging.
Well, it's theoretical, right?
Well, I don't know. We told him he had to build it.
Well, then it's not our problem. He's got to build it.
Suppose he wanted to defend himself, he could have showed up, right?
That's right.
No, he had other commitments tonight. And then I'm holding the control key down after I have a bunch of things selected so that I can move them all at once. And sometimes it even works. So we'll put the mega tree over here, I think, because that way it doesn't take up so much space or so much house real estate. Talk about arches, so let's throw some arches in here too. I put some of the stuff in earlier.
There's a couple of different ways to draw arches. Can we discuss the pros and cons of them? Why we might want individual arches versus the combined version that XLights allows?
Absolutely. So these ones are actually the Showstopper Arch custom models. So that's not exactly what you're talking about.
True.
But let's undo that for a minute and draw arches like most of us have started, with just the basic PEX arches, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not familiar, PEX arches are just like 1-inch PEX tubing from Home Depot out of the water section. And then we put some pixels through them, whether they be pixels or strips or seeds. Lots of different ways to skin that cat. And we'll stay out of any religious discussions about pixel strips, aside from saying that friends don't let friends use strips outside. All right, so we're going to put an arch in here. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to use that shift key again as I'm drawing this to get my red bar across the bottom so it's straight. And there's one arch. And now one thing the arches model would allow you to do is I could come in here and say that's 4 arches. It looks like a really good idea. And if you're doing all your own sequences, maybe that's okay because you can make them do what you want them to do, right? But if you're importing sequences from other people, very few of the sequence vendors do things like this, and it will cause you grief in the long run trying to make your stuff map up with their stuff. So I would tell you that if you're drawing your arches, to draw them as an individual arch. And we're going to call this, instead of arches, we're going to call this arch 1. So I'm going to size that arch to be that size, and it's already vertical. So I'm just going to Control C and Control V, which are your keyboard shortcuts for copy and paste. And I'll Control V again, put arch 3 over there. I think Justin has a couple arches already in his layout. 4 maybe?
Yeah, I thought he had some around his little pathway on his old house.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he does.
Sometimes clicking on models as they're overlapping in X-Lights is a little bit of a art form.
Yeah, I find I have to click into the open space all the time and then click on one to do the select and deselect. Otherwise, weird stuff might happen.
Yeah. So I've got my arches selected because they're in yellow here, and we talked a minute about making those aligned with the bottom. And we're going to right click and we're going to add those to a group. Create a group. We're going to call this all arches. And last time we had a effect on wLED called counting with Blarg. Today we're going to have a group called Spelling with Chris. So here's our spiral trees, and now those 4 are selected. So we're going to right click on those. We're going to put those to a group. We're going to call that spiral trees. And being that this is a Justin layout, we should put a Justin star on the top of the spiral trees, right?
Right.
So I'll tell you the dimensions on those are about
Hey, Chris, there is
9
a
inches.
message about a matrix inside wLED and X lights about text scrolling, if you want to address that.
I can't see the message, Turtle, so if you want to, please.
It says I'm trying to build a matrix using my pixel. I have 10 high and 27 wide, but in wLED I have it set up and it won't display scrolling text right. Are you trying to use X lights or just wLED, Josh? Go ahead, Chris.
So we're going to have to come into this star, and we're going to have to tell it how many pixels are in the star. So it says that it's 50 nodes, which is going to be correct. It's 5 points. And it's going to have 2 layers. So the first layer, the inside is going to be 20, and the outside is going to be 30. And that should get us pretty close to a Justin star. I say a Justin star because Justin sells the 3D models for these, sells 3D prints of them on his Etsy store.
Well, since you were talking about them, anybody have the quick link to drop that into chat or wherever? So
Good call.
People know what we're talking about.
Yeah, so there's those stars, and then these snowflakes are Justin snowflakes as well. And they're smaller, but they can fit well, like stuck to a window with a suction cup. Can work because you can put something in the window and still see out the window.
Yeah. Some suction cups are better than others.
Some suction cups are a lot better than others. It's a fair point.
Some just suck.
I know I've got some from Amazon that have held up well for me. They're a kind that have a suction cup and then a lever hook. So you put it on the window and then fold the lever hook down, and it seems to work pretty well. Clean the window first.
Yeah.
clean the suction cup if you've had it in the box for a year before you put it back on.
And there's also the ones with like the little thumb pump that builds a vacuum.
I don't think I've seen those before. That's neat.
Hey Josh, if you want to join us in Discord, we can get you set up, or if you want to wait, we can probably go over that in just a few as soon as we get done with this.
We can pause for a minute, Tara. What's the question?
It's just trying to get it matrix set up in wLED itself, not X lights.
Oh, okay. One of the things we see in Discord a lot with those is when you do venture out, you set it up in wLED and it works just the way you want it to, and then you're like, oh, cool, let's graduate to X lights and put some X lights effects on it. The model with the way wLED lays out that matrix and the way the X lights wants to send data to the matrix aren't really compatible with each other. I think there's a feature in wLED 15 that you can uncheck to account for that, but wLED 15 has some challenges at this point. We're kind of telling people to stay back for
Yeah, I
maybe a
think
few
he's
weeks
just
until
having
after
problems
Christmas
with
and stuff.
wLED itself and the text effect. That's what I think. I don't think he's using X lights at all.
Yeah, there's probably something we need to get some one-on-one with in the Discord. So I would say jump in there for a few minutes, and there'll be something, and then I can help you out. So I drew these image objects here on Justin's layout the other day, just kind of thinking about where we wanted to put controllers. And we talked a little bit about controllers and distance the last time, but I thought kind of drawing the controllers in the layout would be a neat thing to kind of talk about where we wanted to put, a controller here, a controller there, sort of thing.
Yeah, to plan out all the wiring because we have plenty more pixels to light up than we had last year.
Right. So, I mean, if he's gonna have a mega tree, we're gonna have a controller under the mega tree because I don't want to have 8 wires running somewhere, over to the mega tree.
8 or more, depending on the tree.
Yeah. So we did this with this is actually a 24 string tree. It only goes 180 degrees around because it doesn't mean he needs to look at it from inside the house. So there's actually 24 strands across, from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock here, if it was a clock. And it's
Like a 240 tree or something, 220, 180 degrees, whatever it might be
yeah, I think
worthwhile.
we did a 180 here, something
Okay.
kind of easy. And then it's set up, and X lights is 12 strings. This is kind of a weird thing to explain to people, but the string in X lights is like the number of ports that it's going to take up on your controller. So it's going to be 12 ports or 12 strings in X lights. There's going to be 200 nodes per string, per port. And then the strands per string is how many times it goes up and down. So it's like zigzagging. So we're going up one strand and down the next strand, and that's one port. So instead of having 24 ports or 24 strands, we're going to have 12 ports or 24 strands. So that's why that looks a little weird. But that was to talk about where the controller is going to go, and I'm squirreling off here.
All right. So any specific reasons that you chose these places aside from the mega tree? Because we discussed that.
So I was thinking this was central to Windows, right? We want to stay close and not be far away from things you're lighting up.
Okay.
We're aiming for a distance, 20 feet in the top end of things if you can help it.
Yeah,
There's
try,
some
try
tricks.
to try to keep and try to aim for lower than 20 feet if possible. 20 feet is the upper tier of where it's pretty confident it'll work, but it could start getting questionable.
Absolutely. So I kind of dropped these in places where, I was pretty confident I could hit a number of things. Like this flake over here is probably about 20 feet from this controller. I can hit the windows. I can hit this vertical column here. The gnome's no problem, obviously. So I'm going to hit stuff over on this side of the house. Probably going to talk about putting like a smart receiver or something over there, or some other
That could work.
remote controller, just to get closer, but still maybe be controlled by this controller.
All right. And then last year, Justin had a wLED device up on the roof to run the roof lines. Is that still up there, or are we replacing it?
I think we're going to keep the wLED controller kind of up here.
Okay.
It's going to be an Ethernet wired wLED controller, so that should be able to be suitable to include in our show. The Wi-Fi ones, if you put X lights effects on them, are probably going to lag a little bit, and you'll be pulling your hair out, regardless of how good you think your Wi-Fi is. Just Wi-Fi is meant to get data there sooner or later.
It also seems to have some processor overhead when the ESP is running on Wi-Fi and receiving data from X lights. It seems to struggle on an LED count it was doing fine with earlier.
Yeah, I've seen that for sure. Just thinking about props on the roof and how we're going to get control up to them. I don't really want to run the wires like all up the roof. So maybe another smart receiver chain or two on the roof.
Yeah, that can make sense.
We didn't really talk much about controller choices and difference between controllers and receivers, so it's probably a good time to go into that.
Okay.
So,
Well, we've mentioned some wLED devices. There's many different flavors of those, but do you have a suggestion on one of the bigger type controllers we might use more often?
yeah, I think we're gonna go with culp controllers for this layout. I like the
Okay.
ability to have the controller save the sequence locally, and there's some neat little off-season type effects you can do with things as well, or even after hours type stuff.
So you're like meaning the wLED plugins that can kind of simulate the same effects, right?
Yeah, you can do the simulated wLED effects. You can perhaps have some music happening after hours. Some of the culp controllers even have like a radio transmitter you can use. It's not necessarily ideal, but it works.
Yeah. I never had great luck with the Culp transmitter. Some people have, but more power to them. I don't think it's worth my time personally.
I just noticed we missed creating a group here a second ago, so I'm going to come back and do this. We're going to create a group called All Stars.
If you're an FM radio guru and know how to set that stuff up, then probably, but I never got it to work very well either.
It takes a special hand, and it just wasn't for me, I guess. All right, so what do you got going on now, Chris? Just
So now I'm
grouping
creating
things?
groups for all flakes. Yeah, just kind of getting stuff set up like we want it. So let's buy a controller. If you guys want to drop the link for Culp Lights in the chat. Let's take a look and see. This feels like it's going to end up with a lot of stuff on it. So I want to be able to have some decent expansion out of here. I'm thinking we're going to go with a K16 over here. And then run some smart receivers out from that. So the K16, I talk about that for a second. Controllers out of stock right now because it's 5 days before Christmas. Ho, ho, ho.
Yeah, happens every year. We recommend planning early, so middle of summer, Christmas in July type stuff.
February is nice to plan.
Yeah, that works too.
Take January off, come back in February or after Chinese New Year.
Yeah, plan early. Try not to bite off too much. It can be overwhelming.
Sure can, yeah. Especially your first expansion year. Like just start working with it. You're starting to work with a different controller you haven't worked with before, dealing with props, dealing more with X lights. It can be a lot. So Justin's a bit of a experienced user here, so we're being a little facetious here in a first expansion year. This is bigger than we would typically suggest a second year person go, but this is probably Justin's 7th or 8th year, so he'll figure it out.
See, I like personally buying in January and February so that it's on your mind once summer hits and you're wanting to go to the pool and hang outside and do all that stuff. Last thing on your mind is Christmas lights. So if you can get most of this stuff done in January, February, and then start working back on it in August is probably the most ideal for me anyway.
Yeah, I usually do a lot of planning in January too, just because I'm in Buffalo. Like you can see my show behind me. Everything's still frozen to the ground until almost Valentine's Day. So I'm not putting anything away anytime soon. So this controller has 16 pixel ports. It has 4 of these ports here for smart receivers, and it has this expansion port. That's a special tool we'll use later.
So you like the K16 because it has a wide range of flexibility, right?
It does, and I could expand a K8 to be very flexible as well. but I'm envisioning that there's going to be a lot of density in this area to start with. So I'm thinking that having the 16 local ports will be good. And I can see how this controller will probably end up with an expansion port, so I can get us another 4 smart receiver chains off it in the future.
Yeah.
I can say, speaking from experience, the K8s are great until a point. And then you're going to be kicking yourself and wondering, why didn't I just start with the K16?
Yeah, and I mean, you can turn a K8 into what a K24 by throwing the expansion board in it. There's 2 expansion boards that can fit on this port. One of them will give you 16 more ports of these green, they're called Phoenix connectors, where you can just hook pixels right up to these ports. Another one will give you 4 of these smart receiver ports. You can hook up 4 smart receivers. Each smart receiver can have, 4 of these on it. We're not going to get into a whole lot of smart receiver math on this stream. That'll be a different focus on a different stream. We could probably talk for an hour just on that.
There's some discussion in the chat about thinking the expansion boards might have been discontinued, and maybe also we can discuss why we choose Culp over, say, Falcon or one of the other controllers.
Sure. Go ahead.
I know Wired Watch is still selling the white Falcon expansion board that is no longer sold by Falcon, but Wired Watch is still selling it for the expansions for the Colt.
So this K16 doesn't take the white expansion board. This is the smaller
That's the
header adapter.
E-Fuse, yeah, okay.
So this takes the V4 and above expansion ports.
Right.
I think that the older ones, I don't know the pin count, but it's a wider pin set than that before the E-fuses.
It is. It's like a 41 pin count.
No, I don't have one here anymore. I had a spare controller sitting next to me, but now my spare controller is not so spare because it got pressed into service.
All right, we're getting updates that they're wrong. The V4 is still offered. He must have been thinking about other things.
Excellent.
You
All right.
should Clark that if he wants to make comments like that, he should just join the stream.
Who is it? Who is it?
It's Blarg.
No. I thought he couldn't make it.
I'm helping him participate remotely, I guess.
He was washing his hair or something.
Something.
All right. So one of the things we hear is, if I get a Culp controller, I have to get a Beaglebone. This is true. If you get a Culp controller, you have to get a Beaglebone. A Beaglebone is a little computer, essentially. It's mounted on the back of the controller. You can see the little Ethernet board here. It rides on these 2 sets of pins.
Yeah, the K16. The K16 is what is referred to as a cape. So the Beaglebone is the computer. The cape attaches to the computer, and the computer is still ultimately what does all of the work. The cape just helps it achieve that goal with pixels.
It gives the Beaglebone superpowers. That's why it's a cape.
Yes.
Super pixel powers.
There's a bunch of lights on it too, so even the cape's fancy.
As far as why we pick it over the Falcon, I prefer the FPP-based controllers. They make sense in my head. Some people say the same thing about the Falcons. They're both a perfectly functional controller. They both have, long-standing support in the community. I know that Culp Lights is one of the major
developers
supporters of X-Lights, both from a financial perspective as well as from a development perspective. So I like supporting the folks that support us. David Pitts at Falcon has also been a long-time supporter of X-Lights. No ill will against them. This is what I prefer.
Yeah. Well, Marsh is also in the chat asking about the K8 Pi. So maybe we discuss what the K8 Pi is versus any of the K8s with the Beaglebone, right?
Yeah, so they have a K8 Pi. More of a development focus board.
Yeah. So this is basically a cape for a Raspberry Pi, probably a Pi 4 or so. I'm not sure if it works on a Raspberry Pi 5, right?
It works on a 3 or a 4. I don't think that the firmware works on a 5 yet. I know that he's been working on it.
Okay. Well, what's good about the K8? I guess the Pis, more people might actually have one lying around. Beaglebones aren't all that common.
Mm-hmm.
So that works. The main downside is there's limitations. The Beaglebones have things called PRUs that really help them process large quantities of pixels with minimal CPU usage. The computer really doesn't struggle at all. The Pi, on the other hand, doesn't have any special hardware to do this. It has to run all of the pixel data, all of the processing 100% on its CPU. So it has more limitations. It can't do the same frame rates that a Beaglebone can. It has lower pixel limits. So it works. It definitely works. Marsh can verify that it works, but the limitations are something that people need to be definitely aware of.
Mm-hmm. And if you look, this one has the longer expansion headers. This is for the old white P3 boards. If you guys will give me just a moment.
All right, Turtle, do you have anything to add about cope controllers in your mind?
I mean, adding on the receivers and that they are not Ethernet, don't plug them into the Ethernet. And
Yeah, good point. Good
these-
point.
These black ports up here are RJ45. They take the same wire that your computer does. They don't plug into a switch. They won't work in that fashion. They won't
It
plug
won't
into another
work.
computer.
Nope.
and don't expect them to work after you do so.
Yeah, it's hard on them.
Mm-hmm. They'll plug into these things here, these smart receivers. And these smart receivers can be connected either as a one-to-one, so one in the port, or you could actually connect several of them in a row. I think up to
And-
6. There ends up being some math limitations as you add more to the chains, but we can talk about those in another edition.
So these are the smart receivers that you were talking about adding in the remote locations on Justin's house, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Correct. Doing those in just a single one off of a port, it acts like just a regular port you're adding onto the culp. Now, when you get into chaining, that's more advanced stuff, and we will talk about that later. But
What about
Yeah, I think
cables?
on our current layout, it's going to be mostly just dumb receivers set up. We're not really trying to chain them, are we?
That's my plan, yeah.
Okay.
I heard you guys talking about cables when you're looking inside of DrZzs sphere last week. So what about cables? Where would they get them?
I get mine from either Wired Watts or Paul Zhang Direct. There's plenty of other options. Wally's Lights also does extensions. I'm pulling a blank. What other vendors?
Your
And
Pixel
your
Store,
Pixels-
Mattos,
yeah.
all the major stores sell the extensions.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we can
So I'm
come in
pretty
here, we
sure
can
you
do
want
shop.
them made for you and not try to make them because you're just going to screw them up if you try. So might as well do
Well,
it.
even if you don't screw them up, it's just a huge amount of effort, and you don't really save anything cost-wise.
Yeah, there's a pinned post in the Discord chat, like detailing the cost of an X-Connect cable, like building it yourself with components versus buying the cable retail. And I think we figured out that the cable retail like saves you 30 cents and like an hour of your life. So do a little planning ahead of time, buy some extra cables, buy some more than you need. The nice thing about buying the retail cables is you've got them in, pre-made lengths, right? So you've got a 5, a 10, 15. You can wrap colored electrical tape around the ends. It's going to tell you which lengths are which. And they just all go into the tote at the end of the year, right? You pull them back out and they're there, they work, you can connect stuff. It's not, oh, I pulled the heat shrink off of this one.
Yeah.
Last year, I've got to repair it. I played around with making my own cables at first because I was going trying to go ultra cheap. And I'm like, oh, wait, this isn't ultra cheap. It's the same price and still costing me a whole lot of time. So
And also
All
another
right.
thing I'll add is find a standard and just stick to it. I have a mix of Raywu and X-Connect, and I'm finding that it's a pain to sit there and use the exchangers all the time. So just
Yep.
find one type and stick with it.
Unless somebody's trying to run dual voltages, then it might have a use case.
Right. If you're running
Yeah.
5-volt and 12-volt, yeah.
And that's just to keep you from doing something silly, like forgetting that those spiral trees that you made last year were actually 5-volt props and plugging them into your 12-volt controller and going zzz, letting out all the
Right.
magic smoke.
Yep.
So if
There's
you
not
do
much
something
magic
like
smoke in them either. So
there's not a lot of magic smoke in them. It's not
You
really a
just gotta hook two
satisfying
of those
zap. It's
5
just
volt
like
ones in series, right?
yeah,
It might
Parallel.
work, but I don't think it will.
Be a little dim, but it might work.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, I think that X Connect seems to be more popular in the industry today. That's kind of a blessing and a curse. Blessing because you can find them at more of the vendors. A curse because sometimes when people are selling out of things, they sell out of those first.
Yeah.
But that was kind of the draw for people to the Ray Wu stuff in previous years because they sold out later than the X Connect stuff did because there was more draw on the X Connect. But now we have vendors that only stock X Connect for some of the vendors, and I think I saw that like exact opposite situation happened this year where you could still find X Connect today, and if you really wanted to find some Ray Wu stuff, boy, you're digging for it.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of variable. It's been a little bit different on what sells out every year. And there is a note in the chat here about the rule of Kaiden, the internal joke, or Kentucky Dan, I suppose. So into Discord, he's got the rule, double everything. So if you're expecting to use like 10 extensions, have 10, you'll be surprised you might end up actually using all of them and still need more.
Yeah, so the
Those
rule of
are
Kaiden is
facts.
whatever you think you
Absolute
need,
facts.
buy double.
Yes.
I bought double this year and I still ran out.
Yeah.
Do you guys excuse me for just a minute? It's bedtime and I need to say goodnight.
It's not a foolproof plan buying double, but it
Oh.
usually helps those instances when you missed a thought process or you
Yep.
forgot how to use a tape measure.
For me, it was I didn't realize I added more props than I thought I had.
Yeah. Mine was more the path that I ended up having to take the extension through was a little bit more roundabout than I would have intended. So it added an extra like 8 feet. So that's
Yep.
2 more extensions.
Yeah, as SR said, questions are welcome. If anybody's got questions about X-Lights, FPP, how to get started, what you need, please ask. We're here.
Yes, definitely.
Absolutely. So we said this is going to be a K16 here. We've got what over here? 3 windows and 3 flakes.
Yeah.
And a Grinch. Eeny, meeny, miny. Maybe a K8 over here.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Are we running the arches and the spirals off of the mega tree?
I think so. I'm thinking what we might do is put like a K16 here. This was only 12 ports. So if we do this as a K16, we can run the front of yard props off the mega tree, or we could even do this as a K32 and have some more expansion for future activities.
All right. And to explain what we're looking at here right now, we originally placed the receivers or the controllers anyway, throughout the layout. Our overall goal is to try to keep them as close as possible to the start of the LEDs. Extensions are a thing, yes, but we are trying to keep under the distance thing. Are those instances when we just can't avoid a longer distance. So say we didn't put that smart receiver up on the upper right corner of the roof for that spinner. It's entirely possible that we could get up there with an extension. If absolutely needed, a data booster might get it up there, but that's also a lot of pixels. So we're weighing on the safe side and just putting a receiver up there because the power is going to be a problem through the extension.
Yeah, and maybe we don't actually have the controllers or the receivers up on the roof. I mean, Justin is in Michigan. He gets snow sometimes. Maybe we want to put them in some sort of a house-mounted box. It's going to be on the side of the house that can kind of come up to it. We'll figure out the mounting places for those controllers later. But for now, we're just gonna say they're gonna go in an ammo can on the roof.
Yeah, that works. My first year, things just kind of got tossed around, and then it was like the second year I started kind of understanding what was going on, and you can adapt. So if one year just kind of becomes a pain to put a certain controller in one spot, well, it can be planned and moved.
Yeah, I've kind of been liking these MTM ammo cans lately. This is they call it the short 30. See if I can stand up so it'll not try and cry. Oh, come on.
It's gonna black it out.
Come on, Zoom.
Crazy old man in chat said, what about using the K16 on the mega tree and then smart receivers on the arches and mini trees? You certainly could do that.
Totally.
Yeah, you definitely could.
Yeah,
Uh,
you've got to run power to them anyway, so I don't know if we're better off running just extensions from the mega tree to these things or power and the
both,
Ethernet wire to here. Six of
both
one, half
ways
dozen of the
works.
other. Yeah.
In these types of situations, I just try the more minimal option. So in this case, use some extensions and just go to the K16. If there's issues, maybe I need more power there, then I would definitely put a receiver because
Yeah.
it's the easy way, really.
I'm frankly going to try and design this layout to make this kind of like an obstacle course to make the Amazon and FedEx guys not want to walk through this area where the cords are going to be at. They can walk around to get to the front door to get over the lawn. They're going to walk
Yeah,
over the lawn anyway.
tactical pixels. You got to control people. People walking through your lawns. Your lawn does become a hazard when you have extensions everywhere. So
Yeah. They make these things called cable stakes or landscape stakes at Home Depot, and they're just like they're like
well,
this long, push down and
garden
over the cable. Helps a
garden
little bit.
staple. Garden staple, I think, is another thing that's something found at a garden center.
Yeah, absolutely.
I use those to stake down my mini trees. So
Nice. Yeah, you're going to put signs up. You're going to tell people not to walk across the lawn. They're going to be dumb.
lots of lights and strange displays kind of make people lose their mind. So
Maybe,
planning ahead is usually always best.
maybe they're disoriented, you know?
Definitely.
Ah,
Definitely plan for people to be rude when they are sitting out there. I mean, it just happens.
yeah. Another thing I'm going to try and avoid as we're building this out, I don't want for there to be wires across the walkway here. So when we talked about this being a K8 earlier versus it being a receiver, that's kind of the reason I put a separate controller over here, because we can run network over this separately. We can run power over this separately. We don't have to try and connect it across the walkway. I'm going to try and avoid that when I can.
Yeah. There was one year, a few years back, I ended up doing that just because I needed to. I ran out of ports. But it wasn't great. It made shoveling really difficult. The wire never stayed where it was supposed to be. It was a kind of a nightmare. So yes, definitely don't do that. It won't stay even though it looks like it will.
Yeah. You reminded me of a painful experience I had this season. I ran Ethernet to all my controllers. I was formerly running everything off of Wi-Fi, which is technically something you can do with the Culp controllers because it's saving all the sequence data locally, and it's only sending a heartbeat packet to tell things when to fire. It's worked fine in previous years, but with the height of things and where they are in my house, I didn't have the best wireless reception to them, and I got tired of fighting with them. So I ran Ethernet to all the things, right? Worked really good for Halloween. Worked amazing for Halloween. And then December happened, and I'm in Buffalo, and you can see all the snow behind me. Well, I actually have to snow blow the lawn in front of my light show so that you can see the props. So I snowblowed over an Ethernet cable. I snowblowed over a power cable. Definitely learned some lessons that I can apply to next year, and not do that again.
Yeah,
Crazy
yeah.
old man in chat said, where are his 120 receptacles? Do you want to talk about like power and how you power yours and how often you want to use different outlets for how many power supplies and whatnot?
So you definitely want to spread things out a little more than I do. I think I have like 12,000 pixels in my show, and it's currently running on one AC outlet, effectively one AC breaker. That's probably more than you want to put on one AC breaker, but it hasn't blown yet. The
Yeah.
freezer in my garage and my home entertainment system is also on the same breaker because that's how my house is wired, and I haven't been not lazy enough to run a wire through my finished basement to get it back out to where I want it to be yet.
And
Oh,
20
speaking of,
amps
maybe to
DC is
answer the
not
question.
20 amps AC. So.
It's
Yes.
AC 20 amps this breaker, yeah.
So to further answer the question from Crazy Old Man here, Justin is renovating. So he is actually putting outlets outside dedicated for his light show. So he gets to choose where he puts his receptacles.
Yeah, some of us are more forced into those discussions. In those cases, you can do things like there's a garden here, right? So you can put some outdoor, essentially power strips behind the garden stuff and run cords over there to have some more options. Sometimes you don't have anything better to do than to run an extension cord someplace you'd rather not. In those cases, you can do things like gaffer tape across a sidewalk. If you're in a place where you have to shovel snow, maybe gaffer tape isn't the best idea, but
Yeah, creativity on where to actually plug and get things powered is one of the challenges. It's kind of unique for every house, every light show. So it's kind of something for each individual to figure out on their own in a way. There can be assistance though. If you guys have questions, reach out to us on Discord. We can help.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest thing, especially when it comes to power, is to test. I know, Chris has got 12,000 on one breaker. I've got probably 80% of my show on one breaker. And just as an example, with the power monitoring I have, my K32 is on a 15 amp circuit and it's got about 11,000 LEDs plugged into it. And right now it's using 3.5 amps DC or AC amps as an example.
At what power or brightness though?
30% brightness though. Now, if you up that to 100%, it's going to be a lot more.
sure. And the brightness that you're comfortable running your show at often evolves over time. If all you have on your house is just your roof lines, perhaps you're going to like to run those at a brighter level. They're the only things, producing light on the house. But as you get into a spot where you have a lot more things shining out at the cars, you don't necessarily need to have the brightness of the pixels be as bright to have a great impact.
Yes, there's like a thing that I call brightness balancing. So like the high density props, you can just look at this layout we have on the screen right now. The roof line actually has a very noticeable spacing between them. So they're not going to be as bright in appearance as the spinner. There's way more pixels in a tighter space. So in my use case, the spinners are always dimmed slightly lower to try to balance visually the same brightness.
You know what I think I like, actually, looking back up at this roof line? I think I like these snowflakes up there better. We told Justin we were going to put a bunch of stuff on his roof line, on top of his roof for him to climb up there and have fun with in a Michigan winter. So
I think we need to give him like a matrix either on that right side window or maybe on the brick, either
Oh, I
side.
like that. I like that. It would have to be a pixel matrix, though. Justin's very anti-virtual matrix. But
I'm
first,
thinking that distance, what is that? Maybe a 1 inch, 2 inch spacing? I think a 1 inch would probably work best, right?
Sadly,
Yeah.
crazy old man, I can't help you with that one. I don't get snow either.
Does he want us to shovel it for him, or?
No, he just said we don't get snow, and neither do I.
Yeah, there we go. So there's some more stuff for the top of the roof. That looks fuller. And I like that idea of the matrix. Do you want to put it like here and here, or just one matrix, you think?
I mean, we're going on wish list items right now, so let's try both. See what happens. Maybe we can sell Justin on it, right?
Yeah. So we're going to do dimensions, and this is currently, we'll do 48. No, we're going to do 48 long. We're going to do 48 high. So it's a 4x8 sheet, so it's going to be by 96.
Yeah.
No, it just fits.
Do you want to talk about that for a second? About why you want to make sure certain things are divisible by your port number and all that stuff too?
Oh yeah,
Right-side
we're gonna do a 80,000 foot view of matrices for sure. So this is 48 inches high. So that means we're gonna have, I'm just gonna draw this out as 48 ports to start with, because it's gonna kind of make a little more sense as we get there. This is gonna be Let's say that's 100 for now, just because it makes easy math. So we've got to figure out how many pixels this thing's going to be all together. And you've got to make sure that however you do this, it's divisible by the number of ports you're going to use, because it's got to end up being exact. So rather than having this be 50 times 100, it's going to be 48 times 100, because I think that's going to give us a little easier math here in a minute. So, which is going to be 12 ports of 400 with 4 wraps. Yeah, it's
Sounds
going to
right
get
to
us back
me.
to the same place. So that would use up 12 ports on a controller with 400 ports on each, or 400 pixels on each port. So then if we come in here to our node layout, just to kind of look at what that looks like. We're starting here with node
Can't see
1
your,
all on the left. You can't see my screen?
No, you got it. Never mind. YouTube lags.
Sorry. So we've got node 1 here on the left on all of these.
All right. Do you think that'd be ideal since the matrix is oriented that way, or would we want to rotate it? What do you think?
I think having
All-
node 1s all on the left is going to be good for us.
Okay.
I think that works. Maybe that changes what kind of controller we want here. Maybe a
Yeah.
K16 isn't our best bet. Maybe this becomes a K32.
Yeah. And then it gives you flexible options. If you have power issues and you want to avoid power injecting on that big matrix, you could double the number of ports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's kind of what we're doing here. We've got 400 pixels on a port. I know that if I run that matrix at 30%, I'm not going to be able to tell the difference between, you know,
Maybe-
400 pixels and 200 pixels.
By chance, let's just preface that most of us, at least that I know on this stream right now, use 12 volts. So these numbers and the math that we are talking is kind of in that realm. 5 volts a bit different. Apologies if we cause confusion.
Absolutely. 5-volt pixels are a thing. You know, some of our friends use them. They do make some things more complicated. Some things handled a little differently. The biggest thing is the number of pixels you can run on, you know, one string before you have to deal with either using another port or power injecting. A lot of us tend to avoid power injection on things that are props and show related, because we're setting them up and tearing them down each year, and setting them up and tearing them down and light power balancing or power injecting them at the same time just ends up being a bunch of work.
And
There's
double
definitely
the amount of wires that are
Definitely.
coming from the same prop.
That's true too. So it ends up being a balancing act of what makes life easy.
Yes.
I'd have to say 90% of us do not power inject in our shafts.
I think I've got a couple, but that's about it. Where it was easier for me to do it that way than it was to run 2 wires up the side of the
Right.
house to something. Or
Yeah,
Maybe.
the only thing I've power injected is my showstopper snowflake at 750 nodes. It needed a little bit at the end.
The only thing that I'm still power injecting in my show is funny. It's my PEX arches. So I'm using 12-volt strips in them, but they're the three LEDs per pixel strip. So they end up consuming a lot more power than you think they would, for the fact that each thing is 50 pixels. And because they're diffused through the PEX, I end up running them at 100% brightness. So
The
it
voltage
ends up
drop is
being
more
like,
severe.
yeah, it ends up being 150 pixels per arch, or 150 LEDs per arch at 100%. And they get the yellowing and artifacting like that. So they get injected, but that's the only thing I inject.
Yeah.
I couldn't bring it to myself to run 4 cables for 450 pixel arches. I'm like, no, I just won't do it.
I put a
Yeah, I had to
little,
inject for my front column, but that's for the specific LED problems.
I have a
Yeah.
cabinet which I added a wLED to when I had a couple, I think 6 meters to 6 meters or something. They were 5 volt. So in order to get to the end of those, and the fact that I had 2 power supplies, I had 2 5 amp 5 volt power supplies. I'm like, well, I could stack these, but why don't I just feed one on one end and one on the other? And that worked pretty good.
Sure. When you do something like that where you're feeding from 2 different power supplies, you have to cut the positive wire in the middle. Otherwise, you run into a potential situation where if one power supply were to fail, the other power supply would backfeed the one, and it can make bad things happen.
And
It can be
usually
done. Just,
overloads, blow fuses.
yeah.
Well, mine's not cut, and it's I kind of balanced them when I put them up, but that doesn't mean it won't wear or break. But you know, it's in the house. If it burns, I'll know.
Yeah. I feel like for me at least, things that are permanently installed and things that I'm setting up and tearing down each time, I might make a different decision based on, power injecting, based on how many times I have to do it.
Oh, definitely. Permanently installed stuff. You never know when you're going to have a 4th of July or something that you want to crank that brightness up.
Yeah. At 4 PM in the middle of summer.
Yes. You have lights. You must use them.
Yeah. Because pixels, darn it.
Yes.
Cool.
Well, my grandkids love playing with them. And I got a button for them from Home Assistant because they were having me, Grandpa, turn them red, turn them blue. I'm like, okay, I got sick of that. So I got a button that does a random color. They can push that button all they want and change the color all they want, and it's awesome. And then they get sick of it, and then we're done until the next time.
Awesome. So I'm just thinking of where we're at now, right? So this controller has grown, so we were talking from a K16 to a K32. And this is going to be a SR, I think.
Yeah, smart receiver to get that vertical and maybe the window.
Maybe the
depending
window?
on whatever's closer, it seems.
We haven't really decided what corner we're going to drive the windows from. Right now, they're all drawn to be driven from lower left. We talked about this a little bit last time, but I'm going to harp on it again. As you draw your windows, make them all start from the same direction. It doesn't have to necessarily be lower left. Lower left is how X-Lights defaults. It could be upper left, it could be upper right, it could be lower right. But don't do this one lower left, this one lower right, just because it makes the wires closer together. It will cause rendering challenges down the road that would be very difficult to correct.
And if you go clockwise on the other one.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a really big honking matrix. We've got this window over here. Do you like the matrix over the window even?
Ooh, that could be nice. Yeah. That's like a perfect fit. We're going to have to sell Justin on this.
I like that. That looks sharp. He's gonna have to anchor that down so the matrix doesn't blow through the window. But
so instead of
pretty
plywood,
happy.
you'll have to use pixel strips then and puck them all in with that.
They actually make a mesh product that can come in sheets like as big as a 4x8 sheet and just push all the pixels through that. It's like an HDPE thin
Pixel mesh type stuff. Yeah.
pixel mesh. Yeah.
Sounds painful.
Who sells that? Bescoiled, I think.
I'm grabbing a link for the chat right now.
I thought somebody else might have had something similar, but I can't think of it right now. There's a
GE
lot.
has
There's a
some
lot of
too.
vendors out there. So
There are, yeah. For me, I tend to stick with either EFL if EFL sells it from a Coro perspective, or if they don't sell it, I'll go looking at Bescoil.
yeah.
Talking about vendors, what if I wanted to make my power supply look nice when I was hanging it on the wall? What would I do then?
I mean, it depends on what the controller is and what the power supply is going to be. There's a lot of different options there. If you're looking for something for your wLED, like up on the roof line here, Turtle makes an awfully nice set of plates that goes inside of an RNI box. And I put you on the spot here, Turtle. Kind of thing that would look like a box that your cable company would leave hanging on the side of your house after they're done with an install. Discreet, kind of looking like it belongs there. Looks nice. For things
the ones
I'm
on the
good.
ground.
Sorry, please.
For ones on the ground, I personally build mine in Bud Industries enclosures, so Bud boxes as we call them.
Yeah, I like the Bud Industry boxes too. They're heavy duty. They're hardy.
They can take a beating. You don't have to worry about them cracking if you trip over them in the snow, or you as you're backing up, stringing out some extensions, I don't know, trip and land on one. There's a higher chance that those boxes will survive.
They stand a better chance for sure. We talked about my snow problems, and there's been times that I'm climbing over the area where my boxes are in the garden to get to other parts of my show, whether it's to fix a electrical cord that I may or may not have run over with the snowblower in a previous conversation. And just knowing that I might accidentally step down through 4 feet of snow on top of that box doesn't really worry me as much as some of the other boxes that I have in the show that are less hardy. So
Yeah,
that's
I
something to
think
think about.
What are the ones that Turtle has? Are they the MTM 1500s or the RNI?
The hinge open cases that go on the wall are the RNI ones.
Yeah.
Another kind of
Then there's
thing you
the
can use is the MTM ammo cans, as I was trying to show a minute ago. Is
yeah,
this.
ammo boxes. And one of my smart receivers lives in one of the small little Pelican clone cases from Harbor Freight.
Yeah,
Really,
yeah.
the enclosure doesn't really matter too much as long as it can hold your items, hold your controller, hold your power supplies, and keep the snow, keep the rain, keep all the bad stuff out of the electronics. They don't like that stuff.
The other thing you've got to try and envision with your controller is how you're going to keep the electronics in the controller from shorting out on the body of the power supply.
Yes.
There's lots of different ways to attack that. Some people use one of those plastic plates that come inside some of the boxes, and they'll zip tie things down to those. That can work very well. Some people will buy, prefabricated plates like we were talking about from Turtle or from Wired Watts. Sell different size plates for different size boxes.
One of my boxes this year, just because it was in a pinch, and again, I have a habit of just using whatever's in my garage. I used a sheet of plywood at the bottom and then 3D printed standoffs and a piece of acrylic that the controller then was mounted to with standoffs.
Yeah, I have some 3D printed standoffs that I use on my smart receiver boxes where it kind of attaches the controller off the side of the power supply. Again, it puts a plastic layer between them so you're not shorting out contacts on metal stuff. Those can work pretty good.
Does that answer your question, SG?
Yep.
Excellent.
Cool. So let's see. These are the column matrices. I think those are going to be something I'm going to get from EFL on the big order. Oh, let's talk about how to save money in buying Coro.
Yes.
This kind of sounds counterintuitive, but the way you save money buying Coro is to buy more of it in one purchase. Shipping Coro is very expensive. And
it's big and bulky and awkward for the guys to put in their delivery trucks, so they charge extra for the inconvenience.
Sure do. You may find yourself saving $50 on Coro by combining 2 shipments into one, depending on how much you're buying.
EFL Designs, Jackie actually has put together a system on his website on the way a specific prop is going to be packed down, what size box it would be. So if you follow that, you can actually get like a specific number of layers. One prop might be 2 layers when it's folded. So in that instance, if the box can hold 6 layers, the prop is 2 layers, you can fit 3 props in that box and it'll cost the exact same amount to ship no matter what.
And if you're going to get the star for the top of your Christmas tree, and you have an inkling that maybe you're going to run a Halloween show, maybe you want to add the pumpkin to that same order, because both the star and the pumpkin are 36-inch props, and they don't fit inside the 24 by 48 boxes. And he explained some of that on the site as far as, which things fit in which boxes. But it's stuff like that to try and maximize what fits in the box and not paying the extra FedEx tax on top of it. Sorry.
The same thing seems to happen with most vendors. Shipping seems to add up very quickly in this hobby. So combining shipping costs is always more beneficial than a small order of boosters and then the next week and a couple more strings of pixels because you ran out. Just plan ahead, like the rule we were talking earlier. If you needed at least 1 right now, well, make sure you have 2 so you have a backup because you might need it again.
And as Alki alluded to just a second ago, most vendors will split the bigger props anyway, down the middle and fold it so it's easier to ship. There are some vendors that will offer options to not split it, but it's going to cost you more.
Yeah, for sure.
You pick up at one of the various minis or get-togethers that the vendors are going to be at. You pre-order ahead of time.
Yeah, if you can talk when to put it on their trailer and bring it with them. So that stuff's all awesome. There was something else I was going to talk about just now from Turtle talked about boosters. Boosters are important. And if you're in the game of putting props on things, probably you want to have some extra boosters around, even if you think you don't need them right now. I would say get a 5-pack, get a couple 5-packs. Keep them in your toolbox. Because if you do something like decide you're going to run these spiral trees, I'm going to run a spiral tree and a star, and then another spiral tree and another star. Well, by the time you get up to this star and back down again and over the base of the next spiral tree, maybe that's further than you can get between one LED and another. That is where a booster comes in. You can put a booster on the back of this star and maybe get another 15 or 20 feet cable between this star and the next prop. You know, there's enough oomph left in that, the power coming out of that controller to do that. I'm just doing simple math in my head based on how big I know these spiral trees are. But the distance between the props, again, is kind of where that rub comes in. And not having them, needing them, ends up being a lengthy thing when you're in the middle of setup. And I mean, even if you overnight them and pay for overnight shipping, which is, you know, ridiculous to pay that tax to FedEx. But
For just pixels, yeah.
yeah, for just boosters, right? You're still out, you know, days of time.
And they are like literally your screwdriver in this hobby. If things aren't working, grab it first. And if it doesn't work, then you have a bigger problem. But
yeah,
Yes, things can be unpredictable. The one year I had extensions that just didn't do good touching my landscaping rocks. They caused tons of problems. But the booster somehow helped a little bit. It was still freaking out, so I just didn't put anything back in those rocks. But
if I have a similar problem with my landscaping, where depending on how I route wires in front of this bush or behind this bush, like
weird things happen. Just having the extra things, boosters and whatnot for those completely foreign alien type circumstances just helps.
yeah, the bigger your show, the more you should keep on hand.
Yes.
And they're inexpensive. We're not talking about like
What are they,
talking
like
off your kids' college tuition or something.
like $2.50 to $5, I think, depending
Something
on
like
where
that.
you get them.
speaking of freaking weird things that have happened, I've also seen pixels around garage doors not allow garage doors to open. Now, whether that's the
Yes.
controller or the pixels doing it, but it's the frequency that they're giving off basically jam your garage door where they don't work at all.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's the
this
pixels
happens
for
to
sure.
me every year. It is the pixels. As soon as they get power, my garage door stops working.
Yeah, same with me.
Probably we can point at a DrZzs video that someone can put up in the corner later that will show you how to automate your garage door with Home Assistant.
Yep, I got that going already. That's the only way I can open the door.
That's the only way mine opens this time of year.
For sure. That or pressing the button inside the car or something else. Well, I guess it is working this year. Huh.
It's lights are weird. They're hard to predict. Just because it worked last year doesn't mean the grass grew in a different direction and suddenly things are going to be different. It's hard to say.
It is. So this is a K32. This is a smart receiver. This is a smart receiver. This is a smart receiver. I think with moving this over, that's going to kind of change what we were going to do with this controller. This was going to be a K32.
You might need to flip it. Keep the K32 near the matrix. That's the majority of your pixels, because then a smart receiver can run the GNOME and the Windows relatively straightforward, right?
I like that. Or we could even do, we'll call this 2 smart receivers, because we want to do window, flake.
So like one of those 8-port ones, right?
This might be a good use for one of the 8-port ones. The 8-port ones are technically chaining smart receivers, which is something we said we weren't going to do in this video, but I think it probably makes sense for
And to explain
this
chaining,
use
it's
case.
basically the same amount of pixels as on a single receiver shared between the two, but it's like built-in power distribution, and the receivers don't have to be next to each other.
Yeah, so basically you can run a cable from your controller to the first receiver, and then from the first receiver to the second receiver. If you feel like that's something that your layout really is going to benefit from, I would highly suggest that you stop in Discord or have a conversation on Facebook with someone, have a conversation with someone who knows how this works well, and make sure that your plan is going to make mathematical sense, because it's really easy to run afoul of the number limitations there and not realize it until it's the first week of December and you're plugging things in and you're like, how come none of my stuff works?
Well, we can do an example. Let's say the K32 stayed over by the Gnome, and we used, say, 2 of the 8-port receivers over at the Matrix. Why would that be a bad idea?
Okay, so that's going to give us technically 16 physical ports to plug things into, right? So 2 of the 8-port receivers, we run 2 Ethernet wires over there, right? So we're not chaining one off of the other. So that's going to mean that we're going to get approximately 390 some pixels to a port at 40 frames per second. This is the way that math is going to work out.
Something like that.
And we were trying to get 400 nodes per string or 400 nodes per port on this matrix. So that's going to be under where we want to be. There is some long mathematical theory and electrical theory of why that happens that will.
Yeah, basically chaining with smart receivers shares the port. So it's still just one port, so you're still bound by the overall pixel limits of one port.
The way I've been explaining it to people lately is that the limitation isn't really on the port, it's on the wire. The wire coming from the controller to the first smart receiver has 4 pairs of Ethernet cable, right? There's 4 pairs in the Ethernet cable. And each of those pairs is 1 port worth of data, but that pair can only hold 800 pixels worth of signal. And if you chain that off to another controller, it's still, that first hop of the cable is still got that same limitation on it.
Yes. Let's talk about that 800 pixel top tier one. That is the upper tier. Please don't
Top
plan
tier, upper tier.
please don't plan your show around those upper numbers unless you're planning on running low frame rate static animations. You're just not gonna you're gonna have disappointment ultimately. So it might be able to do 800 pixels, but try to keep it lower, say 400 or less if possible.
So with 400 or less, I can usually manage to get things going without injection.
For the
I
most
do
part, yeah.
Yeah.
I do have one in my show where I'm running my 750 pixel showstopper snowflake off one port, and I don't notice any lag or stuttering on it at all. It's some pretty quick stuff happening.
Yeah.
Well, the power thing's probably the biggest one because at least with the culps, they do tolerate the frame thing pretty good. They drop frames when they can't meet the speed of the pixels. So they still keep up. You just lose a
Right.
little bit. So the pixels can get glitchy.
I think you're running some sequences at like 100 frames a second too, aren't you?
Yeah, I push the limits. I know I'm making the beagles cry.
That's awesome.
The limits are there. I'm learning where they're at, so I don't push over them because it's kind of a pain when suddenly everything falls on its face because you're asking way too much.
So how long can we get on the Cat5 wire between the controller and the smart receivers? I think that's like 200 feet, 250 feet.
I think it's the 100 meter, 300 and some feet is what it's actually rated for.
Okay, for the actual length of the Ethernet wire. Okay.
I've
Yeah, I
heard
believe so.
253 myself.
I mean, I don't think we're gonna have a problem hitting any of the distance we're trying to hit in this show with that. Just kind of trying to think about how this is gonna work. I guess it doesn't even make sense to have this be a smart receiver anymore if we're gonna have the K32 there, right? We can run a cable from this K32 and hit that vertical easy enough.
A fun fact, inside of the Cat6 wire, each of the pairs is a different length because they're wound at different rates. So some are a lot longer than others and considerably longer. So I would think if you have a trouble with one of the pairs and you have an empty pair, try a different pair.
What's that for?
The Cat 6
On the
wire,
data wire.
the wire itself has, each pair is wound at a different rate. So the twists in it are different. So each pair is a different length.
Okay.
By a considerable
Well,
amount.
the specific reason is based around crosstalk and keeping the pairs different so that they don't interfere with each other. But
Exactly.
yes, the length is very much different. So just because you measured it out in the grass and it said, oh, it was only 100 feet, well, electrically, the cable itself is actually probably an extra 20-30% higher.
Oh,
So
that's interesting.
So I'm just thinking, if you're like pushing the limits and you're not using all the ports, try a different port on that same cable. It might work because it's shorter or something.
The
Chris, well, we are getting kind of late on this stream. Do we have anything else we need to wrap up before we close out?
I think we're in pretty good shape here.
Is there anybody questions? Put them in the chat, please, before we wrap this up.
Oh, you know what we didn't show? Well, we showed it the last stream, putting the props on a controller.
Okay,
Yeah,
the
let's
visual
show
here.
that real quick.
While you're doing the questions in the stream, I'll just click through here quick. So we're going to add an Ethernet. We've talked a whole bunch of times about this is going to be the Garden K32. And it's going to be vendor Culp Lights. And we're going to choose a model, and it's going to be K32 AB. We're going to leave all this stuff checked. We talked about having our default brightness be 30.
And then the active being X lights only. Any device running FPP you want to have on X lights only.
Give it an IP address, and we'll just pretend that's correct for the sake of our stream. We'll leave that there the way it is. If this controller were actually at that IP address, when I clicked off of it and clicked back on, this light would turn green, like it does with the DigQuad that's still plugged in sitting next to me. So we're going to go into the Garden K32, and we're going to go to Visualize. Drag that back over to the screen you guys can see. So on our K32, we literally have 32 ports. We didn't actually show a picture of that in the Culp Light site. We should. Controllers.
Turtle in the chat, they want to know what your total was when you checked out with that order from today.
Oh, we didn't price it out.
I wasn't keeping track.
The number one rule of having a light show is if you have to ask how much it is.
Reconsider.
It'll be a quarter of what I tell my wife.
The stuff we're talking about isn't incredibly inexpensive. It's very powerful stuff. It's very capable stuff. At the point where I have to start adding it up and getting total prices and treating it like a work project, it stops being as fun for me. So I couldn't tell you how much my show costs, and I don't think I want to know.
Me neither. Don't care.
Yeah. Nope.
I care.
Yeah.
Like I want to have it
Same.
less expensive as I can, but I definitely don't want to be making spreadsheets and thinking about it like an engineer and making an out-the-door shopping list.
Yeah, like we mentioned earlier, trying to save a few pennies and making your own extension. Yeah, financially that is less, but there's a lot better things personally I can be doing with multiple hours than building extensions.
I'm not sure that I can make an extension for the price that I could buy one. Maybe after I factor in shipping. If I've got to buy one extension, it's probably cheaper to make it. But
yeah,
if I'm going to buy a bunch of extensions and have them shipped in with some other stuff, no, I can't pay for that time back. It's no way.
Also, one controller that we didn't talk about on here is like the K40 and the K129 and all that stuff. Those controllers are really meant for just smart receivers and smart receivers only.
Yes.
Yeah, and they're
Correct.
very capable controllers. I didn't really know that Justin's layout lent itself to one of those.
I didn't think so either. I was just mentioning it while we were looking at the page.
Yeah, it's one of
Yeah.
those instances where just because the number's bigger doesn't mean it's better. It's just different.
Yeah. So the reason we pulled up this page is because the K32 has 32 ports, right? So there's 16 on the bottom, there's 16 on the top. I can't tell you from this picture which one is the bottom or the top because it's actually printed on the circuit board, really small letters. This is the bottom. This is port 1. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Reason I say that is because you have to know how they're plugged in to know how to put them together in X-Lights. So we'll come back down here to X-Lights. And we have ports 1 through 32. And those are going to be the physical ports that are attached to the K32.
And the other ports are the smart receiver ports.
Yeah. So we're going to put our matrix, we said, on the K32.
If you're interested in
that's gonna be our-
seeing that hooked up, one of the prior the streams of Christmas was DrZzs trying and failing to hook his up, and then trying again, and then trying again, and I think getting it the last time mostly, but he got them all mixed up.
Absolutely. So this matrix we already set up to be 12 strings, which if remember we said is 12 ports. So I'm going to click and drag this matrix over to port 1, and it's going to automatically put it across the 12 ports. Props that are set up like this to span multiple ports in a row. That's at the end. They
You
can't
change
have
it.
4 here and 4 down there. It's got to be in a row.
And don't think about putting half of a mega tree on one controller and half of a mega tree on another controller. It does not work. You cannot span controllers either.
There are ways to do it, but it's way more advanced than we're in for this.
And even if there are ways to do it, I mean, it's such it gets into such some craziness to make it work well. It's not worth it.
It is
Absolutely.
not. It is not. It's like a last ditch effort in my mind.
So we've also got more ports here, right? We said that vertical is going to be on there too. Did I put that column in here? So column 4 is going to be on this controller as well. That's only 200 pixels. That should be fine. There was a window frame there too, I think, right?
I think so.
Window low right.
Because you had the matrix, you had its own frame, and then you had
Yeah,
the
you had
4
the-
vertical.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you had the frame around it. Yeah.
So those are the stuff that was around that K32, right? We've got more ports here for expansion, kind of on purpose, right?
Yeah.
So then we start talking about putting receivers places, right? We were going to put a receiver over under that gnome. And we said we were going to put 2 receivers over under that gnome, right? So here, we're just going to run 2 receiver wires off to that left-hand side because it makes this simpler for us for the sake of this video. So we're going to do window frame top left.
So JC man, are you saying that it can't go on the main controller and the expansion? It has to go all the way on the expansion?
Actually, I feel like we've talked about this before. I think you might be right, but I can't remember.
That's what I was
Yes,
asking, 'cause I
because
can't
the-
remember. Yeah, he
On
said
the
yeah.
K8, port 9 is a smart receiver. Port 9 is not the expansion.
Right, because it skips
Yeah.
it skips those ports. That's
It
right.
Right, so
skipped-
you've
that's
got-
right.
You've got 3 sets of expansion ports, or 3 sets of receiver ports, and then the expansion goes at the end of those. So again, it becomes a math problem because it's not port 1 through port.
Right, it's
16.
not technically, yeah.
They just
Exactly.
always have to be sequential.
So that first smart receiver port is going to be 33 through 36. You see they're in different colors here. That's kind of giving you your blocks of 4 pixel ports. So we're going to run the lower center window. We're going to run the Nellis gnome, I think it was called. Probably a couple of Justin Flakes.
And those can be chained if they're close.
Yeah, there's only 50 of them on each, so we'll probably chain those right off of each other. And you can add you up the total number of ports that you have there on that port overall to kind of give you a ballpark of if you're close on your power injection numbers and stuff like that.
Alright, was there anything else we needed to get onto this K32?
Let's take a look. So we've got the column, we're going to put these expansions up top on the K32 as well, right? Oh, there are actually 2 windows and 2 snowflakes in the gnome. So we'll get back in there in a second. We've got 2 more receivers we're going to use up top. So that's not what I wanted to do. Controllers tab. And then go K32 and then visualize. So we're missing a window. So I think what I'm going to do instead is we're going to do window flake. And then we're going to do window flake. Because they're going to be close to each other, it's not going to be a problem running from the end of the window to the beginning of the flake. There's not a whole lot of pixels in the window, not a whole lot of pixels in the flake. We're not going to have to worry about power injection for that with our 12-volt pixels, so we should be good there. I think that's window frame 6. Yeah, that looks good. So that's that section over there. Up top on the left, we had a showstopper.
Didn't you have a snowflake and a spinner on both sides?
I had a snowflake and a spinner. So it's going to go spinner. It's 541 pixels. It's a bunch. There's an E flake. And then a spinner and an E flake. And I think we had a big showstopper snowflake up there too. So the showstopper snowflake is 750 pixels. It's kind of a lot to put on one port. I don't really want to power inject it. So what we're going to do instead is run 2 wires to it. So I'll show you how we do that. We'll close out of our visualizer and we'll come into our layout. And we'll click on our showstopper snowflake. And we're going to say strings 2. And then we're going to check individual start nodes. Our first string will start at pixel 1. And it's 750 pixels total. Let's do...
Probably round it up to about 400. That way it's at a probable connector, right?
I was going to say 401, right? So we can end right at a connector and just plug right into the next one. Not sure about cutting anything or soldering anything on exactly. So we'll click there. Our red box is lit up. We always click the red box to save when it's lit up because otherwise Xlights is going to Xlights on us and crash and make us unhappy. So now the showstopper snowflake is going to show us that that's not what I told it to do. Let's try this again.
I don't think you saved
It didn't
it.
save.
Yeah.
It didn't
Save?
save your. It didn't take your individual strings.
It took 2.
I think you got to press enter or something on that.
I
right?
think you're right. I think I got to press enter or I got to press tab to get out of the field. So now it's going to say that we've got 400 pixels on one and 350 on the next. So that's perfect. We could do the same thing with the showstopper spinner if we wanted. I'm going to run these a little darker. I think that 541 pixels is probably going to be okay enough. I'm going to test it. I'm going to make sure it works well before I put it out. If I decide I don't like the way it looks, it wouldn't be that big of a deal to make it take up more ports.
Yep.
So now that gets the whole right side of the house on controllers.
Are
We're
there
the same-
any questions in chat? I mean, I know there's only 3 people watching still. Is there any
Kinda late.
questions at all?
I didn't see any questions come in, so
Cool. So I'm not going to make you watch me hook the mega tree up or the rest of the stuff, but it follows the same process, right? You're going to drag things to your visualizer. It's going to take up the ports it takes up, and you're going to make sure it fits.
and then you hook them up the same way, or you put them in the visualizer the way you've wired them.
Yeah. When you're in Xlights and you have everything all done and you're ready to go out and do your plugging stuff in, you don't want to really have to come back here and change a lot. You can come back here and change after you plug them in, but it becomes easier if you don't. You can come in here and take screenshots of this.
You can
can-
also right click and print that page too.
Oh, you were showing us that the other day, Turtle. Let me do that now. So I can right click here and I can print this and I can,
Print that to PDF, you can print it to whatever.
okay.
You can also do it as a CSV too.
The other thing that I've been taking to do this year that I liked a lot is you can also go in here to tools and you can do, wow,
Marsh says multiple props on one port. How would you do that? I think we showed that in the last
Oh,
video,
yeah.
but
Good call. Let's do that quick. Let's pretend that these spiral trees are closer to, well, we kind of showed that down here with the window, right? We have the window and then we have the Justin Flake.
yeah, there you go. Okay, we did show that, yeah.
So we'll find our Justin Flake again and we'll drag it and we're going to put it on top of that model. So when it's highlighted on the right side of that model, it means it's going to go to the right side. I could also move it over to the left side of that model and have it happen before the window. So
And then it's also, while we're here, you can right click on the port itself and clear all models from the port. And you can do a few other things in there too. There's two different menus inside here. If you click on the port or the black area.
I just found this year and I like this a lot, to move all models to port. So
Yeah.
I was moving something around on one of my controllers so I could make room for a larger thing to happen there all in the same space. And I could just right click, move all models to port 32. And I thought that was pretty handy.
Yeah, I've used it when I inadvertently broke a pigtail and I didn't want to have to fix it, so I just moved it to a different port.
Yeah. What this does, to answer Marsh's question, I know Marsh knows how to do this. He's just trying to make sure we answer this for the other folks watching. Appreciate it. This is port 33, right? We come out of the controller and we immediately connect to window,
No, that'd be
window
33,
lower
so
center.
so that'd be a receiver, actually.
Yeah. So this would be the first port on the first receiver on the K32. It would be port 33 according to Xlights and FPP. So we come out of the receiver and we go to the window and we go
Wasn't
around
that
the
one-
window.
I just remembered, wasn't that one of those 8 ports under the windows?
I don't know if we decided it was going to be 8 port or 2 4s. I think we ended up running it as 2 4s because we weren't going to show smart receiver stuff or smart receiver chaining in this video.
Okay.
Trying to keep it simple.
Yeah, if you are going to end up chaining receivers, stop by Discord and please get help before you decide to do so.
We should probably do a follow-up video on receiver chaining and beg and plead with JC Man to come and
And I think
lead that video.
I think
Yeah.
tomorrow we are streaming again, right?
Yeah,
Right.
maybe we talk about receiver chaining tomorrow.
Yeah, maybe we can talk about it tomorrow a little bit about the chaining the receivers a little bit and the pros and the cons of doing so
Yeah.
and how to do so.
I think
But-
what you guys have listed for tomorrow was talking about sequencing and making things pretty. So, right? That's what's on the list. Well, that's the plan tomorrow night, same
That is
time.
the plan, yes.
That is tomorrow night, same time,
Yep.
9:30 Eastern.
So
Making spirits bright.
I don't see any more questions. Thank you, Marsh. Thank you, everybody, for questions in the chat.
I don't know that I really finished answering this question. If I could, SG, just for a second. So we come out of the receiver, right? We go into the window, we go around the window, and at the end of the window, we go to the flakes. This is like segment 1, segment 2 on that output. If you think of it that way from your wLED perspective.
In FPP and FPP, I think they call them virtual strings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So okay.
Well, hey, thanks guys for tuning in. I know we're probably not as entertaining as DrZzs usually is, but
Well, if
This
I
is
came
be
not
up
what
with
I
here.
do very often, so.
hope we helped.
if I came up with some videos that would go, blah, blah, well, I got a couple of them, but I just haven't figured out how to make them work. But we don't
Hopefully,
have
SG didn't
DrZzs
have my
computer.
face too big on the camera. So
Well, mine was too big, so That's for sure. But I can't really do anything about that. There you go. How you doing, Chris? Looking right at you.
Oh, am I on the camera now? Uh-oh.
So
Cool.
somebody with the controls over there. All right. So thanks everybody, and we will reconvene tomorrow at the same time and the same place, and hopefully I won't mess up quite as much at the beginning. So let's give it a shot, and thank you for coming. Thank everybody for showing up, and see you next time.
Bye,
Have a good
guys.
So long,
one.
folks.